Eric Black, and this is my TED Talk for Introduction to Cyber Ethics. Uh, Today, I'm going to be going over social media, in particular, how social engineering interacts with the platforms and creates kind of more of a instantaneous influence nowadays, as opposed to how it used to be in the olden days, quote unquote olden days, when you needed political radio and buying ads and things like that in order to exert any kind of influence over a mass amount of people all at one time. We really didn't have that kind of ability back in the day. Um, the internet really has changed things in that way, and social media in particular has really made it so much easier to just kind of blurt out whatever message you want and influence a lot of people in the process. And so social media, in a lot of ways, is just, in my opinion, just a platform for social engineering in this case. Obviously, it does other things, but it can be used and it is being used for social engineering and obviously influence. You hear that word all the time with influencers. Uh, I think that's really what it's mostly geared towards at this point in time. I think a lot of the younger people, in particular, stay on the Twitter platforms and Instagram, and the older people are actually on Facebook now, and some studies have actually shown that. Those same studies have actually shown that the heaviest users of social media show higher tendencies towards narcissism, which is an interesting kind of thing to just throw in there. That really wasn't going to be any kind of an emphasis of the talk, but I saw that in several different pieces of research, and I did realize that that's a big part of this. Um, there is a thought process, whether it's true or not. It's really too early to tell, in my opinion, because there's studies that go both ways. There is a thought process right now that the amount of narcissism is increasing overall in our society because of social media and because of especially platforms like Instagram, where it's mostly images and kind of very easy memes to just kind of grasp onto without really doing any thinking. Um, so that's kind of one of the concepts here, is that there's it's kind of an age gap between the platforms, but at the same time, they're all kind of showing the same kind of results when it comes to the narcissism correlation. Um, Pattern like social pressures that we act on, basically. Um, we see other people doing something, we assume we need to do it that way as well, um, without anybody really telling us to do that. It's just kind of something that we've been shamed at some point, and we know to do it that way now. Heaven forbid we get shamed again for doing something that we weren't supposed to do in a social setting. Um, so humans have it, animals obviously have it, and a lot of those are inherent with early on with both humans and animals. Very specific types of stimuli are needed for very specific types of species that will, endear them to the young, for example, while they're raising them. We have, the same type of instincts, and we also later on in life, when we kind of lose those instincts, we still have instincts to fit in, like we were talking about social pressures. A study was done 1978, where a Xerox machine, if people know what a Xerox machine is anymore, it's a copier machine. Uh, Back then, they were very much highly in demand. They usually cost some money to actually get a page if you wanted to make 5 pages. So they did an experiment where um, a student went around and asked if he could cut in line for a Xerox machine, because there was a line of other students there waiting to make copies. When he gave a reason for wanting to cut in line, whether that was a legit reason or not, he was successful over 90% of the time. When he didn't give a specific reason of why he wanted to cut in line, he was successful 60% of the time. Um, and like I said, it didn't matter what the reason was. And the first reason was I was in a rush. Can I use a can I use the copier machine before you, please? 94% success rate. The second reason was may I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies, which doesn't really make sense even. But he got a 90% success rate with that. And that was a real quick, it probably wasn't very, it's probably been debunked at some point, but I think it was an important kind of milestone to see what kind of, how easily we could be swayed in social situations based on social pressures that we all kind of adhere to. So, it's kind of surprising to some extent, but it's not really. I mean, we all kind of don't want to be, singled out in public, and we don't want to look like that person that everybody thinks is the weirdo or whatever. So you kind of avoid those situations entirely by just kind of, trying to keep the peace. And we're really too smart for our own good usually, in that sense. So we'll eschew innate behaviors meant to help us survive, and we'll just kind of latch onto those cultural ones, of course. But platforms that are actually really kind of, inundating us with a lot of false information, a lot of influencers are kind of turning us a little more narcissistic, possibly at this point, especially the younger generations. So what do we do about this? I don't think we can really rely on the social media platforms to do anything on their own and police themselves, because they've never really been good at that, as we've seen over the years, especially with Facebook and Twitter. So I think at some point, federal law has to be created to try to kind of get this, some type of mandate involved where we can kind of have a program early on in people's lives where they're kind of made aware of what social engineering is, how it could be used against them, how it could be used for good, and things like that. Because I never really, I mean, it's kind of, you kind of think of it as being inherently a part of your education growing up, but I never remember it being brought up specifically, which I thought should be kind of, it's one of those things that you kind of would remember in school somewhere along the line at least. But again, our schools are set up to kind of say, hey, no, we're going to get smart, we're going to be smart kids, and we're just going to know not to fall prey to that kind of social engineering. And obviously it doesn't work very well, because it's just kind of sweeping everywhere, not just in America, but all over Europe, and tons of African countries, and tons of Asian countries as well. So we see it, and it's been in South America for decades now. A lot of just propaganda is being used to just sway a lot of people to believe this one political party over another, make everything kind of divisive and kind of team game kind of thing. And I think we need something, at least in the United States, that can kind of quell that at the federal level. I don't believe it should be something that we can really do to force people into like registering for social media and tracking them so that we know everything what they're saying. It's more like we need to kind of just get them trained, get them aware of what's possible out there, and what to expect and how to react to it. And that's my TED Talk. I'm Eric Black. Thanks.